Good afternoon and welcome to Turning Points. My name is KJ Sharp. I'm the CEO and Development Specialist for Sharp Turns, Performing Arts, and Personal Development. This Turning Point series is designed to equip you with a few motivational, inspirational, and transformational tools to help you make those sharp turns, to navigate those sharp turns in your life. This is Turning Points number 11, and today we're going to talk about 5 smooth stones. When I was a kid, my mom took us to Sunday school every Sunday. As a matter of fact, at one point she was Sunday school superintendent, so we were not missing Sunday school. In Sunday school, I learned about the story of David and Goliath. Of course, that David was the young boy who killed the 9 foot tall giant Goliath, and all he brought with him was 5 smooth stones. As I got older, I started to wonder about this story about David and Goliath. How could a kid kill a seasoned warrior? Because, see, Goliath was not only 9 feet tall, he was a seasoned warrior. His shield was so big, he had somebody else carrying it. His sword was so big, David could have never even picked up his sword. It was so big and so heavy, and he was the Philistines' number one dude. Like, nobody could beat this guy. And that's why the Israelites were so afraid, because he was their best. But I learned, after doing a lot of research, I learned that in those days, there were different kinds of warriors. Now, Goliath was the kind who carried a sword and a shield. So he was the knife guy. There were also warriors who were skilled at arrows, at bow and arrow, shooting bow and arrows. And then there were the slingers. The slingers were people who used a slingshot and could hit a target hundreds of miles away, like on point, hit it. David was a slinger, and he was not a slinger because he was in the army. He was a slinger because that's how he protected his sheep. When he saw a fox coming, or a bear, or an animal, or something that was going to harm the sheep, he used to sling. So he was out in the fields with the sheep all the time. So part of his learning experience was learning how to use a sling. So when he went to the battle with Goliath, first of all, there are some other facts. I learned that Goliath couldn't see. Goliath had a problem with his vision. I don't know what's farsighted or nearsighted, but one of the reasons he said, "You come to me as a dog," is because he really couldn't see David very well, and David was small. You come to me like a dog, like you're so little, I can't really see you. The other thing, Goliath wasn't ready for the fight that David came for. See, David came as a slinger. Goliath came as a swordsman. So Goliath expected to fight another swordsman. You fight differently with different equipment. So David brought 5 smooth stones to the battle, and Goliath brought a sword and shield. So he didn't expect to fight against a slinger. And when you're not prepared for who you got to fight against, you're more apt to lose. So, 5 smooth stones. David carried 5 smooth stones. Another little FYI. He carried 5 because the giant had 4 brothers. David was going to kill them all. That was his goal. So, the story of David is important to me. I love the story of David. I read it often. I've done a lot of research on David. But why the 5 smooth stones is important to me is because when you go through trauma and what some people call trials and grief and pain, you need some artillery to help you get through. And for me, there were 5 smooth stones. My first is gratefulness. Gratefulness, and I think you've heard me say it before, gratefulness is my superpower. So the first thing I learned to do when I'm dealing with a situation is to find something to be grateful for. Right now, as some of you know, I'm dealing with a physical ailment, learning to walk again. And it's a little tough, but gratefulness has been my superpower. It is every day finding something to be grateful for, even if it's one thing, just one thing, just one thing. Grateful my fingers work. Grateful I can see. Grateful I can smell. Grateful I can hear. Um, Grateful I have people in my life who love me. Grateful I can walk. I can talk. There's really always something to be grateful for, and sometimes it's very difficult to find it. And that's why gratefulness is your superpower, because when you find the one thing to be grateful for every single day, believe me, you'll find more. And the more you find to be grateful for, the more joy you'll have, the more peace you'll have. So, the number one smooth stone is gratefulness. My number two smooth stone, through all the stuff that I've been through, is meditation and mindfulness. I had to learn to meditate. Um, I had to learn to keep my mind still, because we think so much, and I tend to overthink. So we're always thinking about stuff, and my mind was always running, 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 running. So I had to learn to quiet my mind, and it took me a long time. Like, it was so hard when I first started to meditate for 1 minute. 60 seconds was like 60 hours to me, and it was very hard to meditate, but I learned how to do it. There's so many so much meditation music on YouTube, and I use that. There are some different apps, meditation apps. I've used maybe one or two of those, but meditation is just being quiet. There's a scripture that says, "They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength." Waiting is meditating. It's being quiet. Just being quiet. It doesn't mean wait in the sense of waiting for somebody. It means just being quiet. And that way you can hear what the universe is trying to say to you. So meditation helped me. Mindfulness helped me. Mindfulness is basically being mindful of where you are and what you're doing at the moment. Like eating. Really tasting your food. Really, when you eat your food, like, we're gulping down our food, we're eating during while we're working, we are rushing through a meal, we gotta hurry, we gotta hurry, we gotta hurry, so we never taste our food. So mindfulness means that you're gonna now taste your food. You're gonna now take your time and eat slowly and feel the textures and the scents, and try sometimes to figure out what's in your food, what seasonings are in your food. That's mindfulness. Mindfulness is sitting down with a child and without your phone. Don't take videos of your child. Sometimes just sit down with your child and watch your child play without taking videos. Just be in that moment, paying close attention to the person you're with. When you're holding someone's hand, really feel their hand in yours. Is their palm warm? Is it sweaty? Is it strong? Is their grasp strong? Really be mindful of the moment. And when you're mindful of the moment, you will find that you will have, again, more joy and more peace and more enjoyment in your life. So the second smooth stone, first smooth stone is gratefulness, second smooth stone, meditation and mindfulness. The third smooth stone for me has been a support team. When you're going through stuff, you need a support team. You can't get through everything by yourself, especially if you're facing a tragedy. There's a lot of gun violence in our nation today. There are a lot of people being murdered. Just ridiculous violence, and sudden and tragic and awful. And in order to deal with that kind of grief, that's complicated grief. In order to deal with that kind of grief, that's something we can't do alone. It doesn't just take a village to raise a child. It takes a village to help us all get through the hard parts. We're all connected. And so when we're going through, we need to connect. When my son had a severe traumatic brain injury, and what I did, because I didn't know a lot about it and I didn't know anybody who had had this experience, and so I found on Facebook a support group of caregivers and people who had traumatic brain injuries, and I was able to glean from them. I was able to share with them. It was a closed group, so I was able to, vent. I was able to get information, and I had a group of people who understood where I was coming from. I didn't really have to explain my pain. So, and that helped me. That helped me in a lot of ways. It helped me get information. It helped me to deal with, what I was dealing with as a caregiver for my son. So get a support system and make sure your supports are positive supports. You don't want anybody telling you that this is happening to you because God is punishing you, or this is happening to you because God is trying to get you to see something, or this is happening to you. Job had a lot of friends who, when he lost all of his children and all of his wealth, and he's sitting there with boils on him and he's in pain, and he had all these friends who came by to tell him, this is happening to you because you're a sinner, or you disobey God somewhere, or let me tell you something. The universe is very loving, very, very, very loving. And life happens to all of us. This is me. I really don't think God is pointing you out to hurt you. I don't think a loving God chooses to just hurt people for no reason. So life happens. Remember that life happens. And when it happens, get a positive support team, really positive, that will support you, will listen to you, and sometimes will just sit and shut up. I have a really good friend who, when my son passed, would come and just sit quietly and say nothing. And that was so powerful for me. So get yourself a really good support team that works for you, including therapy. Make therapy a part of your support. And there's all kinds of therapy. You can go to a therapist, a qualified therapist. You can get now therapy online, where you can talk to somebody. The Domestic Abuse Project, Delaware County Domestic Abuse Project, has a hotline that you can call unanimously if you're dealing with domestic violence. Women Against Rape also has a hotline that you can call anonymously if you want to talk to somebody. There's a suicide hotline. Suicide Prevention Coalition has a hotline. Please use those. That's therapy. That's therapy. In the Black community, we get so scared of the word therapy, but we need it. It's part of our healing. It helps us get that stuff off of us. It helps us release stuff, and it can save your life. So do get a support group, which includes some therapy. Number 4. I have to look at these now. What did I do with number 4? I have to find it now. This is crazy. So gratefulness, mindfulness and meditation, support. I actually think therapy was number 4. So let's say that. Get some therapy. And therapy doesn't have to be doesn't even have to be talking. Journaling is therapy. Dance for me was therapy. Art is therapy. Music is therapy. Get some therapy that will give you some peace of mind. The other thing, let's see. Oh, the last smooth stone. Wait, was that 3 or 4? Okay. Oh, 4 was therapy. Okay, 5 5 is simple. 5 is the easiest stone and the hardest. Do the work. You cannot be free of your pain unless you face it. You've got to face your anger. You've got to face your fear. You've got to face what happened to you. And until you face it, you can't get free from it. If you hide, the longer you hide from it, the more it eats away at you because it's hidden like a cancer. So in order to get through, you have to go through. It was very painful for me to go through each thing that I went through, each journey. It was painful. But I learned that if you don't face that pain and face that fear and face that anger, you'll never get over it. So face it, look at it, call it what it is, and do the work you need to do to get through it. A dark place is a dark place, and I've been to some very, very, very dark places. And I'm thankful and grateful that I came through. So I'm leaving you these 5 smooth stones that help me to come through in hopes that they will help you to make that sharp turn on your journey that gets you through your pain, through your grief, through your anger. We'll talk some more. Those are my top 5 smooth stones.